Lu denounces the majority opinion. In the boat on the way to chasing, the two travelers beguiled the time by discussing affairs. Lu impressed upon his companion the necessity of concealing from Sun Chuan the truth about the magnitude of Tsao's army. "I do not promise to do what you ask," replied Chuko Liang, "but I shall know how to reply." When the boat arrived, Ming was lodged in the guest's quarters, and Lu went alone to see his master. He found him actually at a council, assembled to consider the situation. Lu was summoned there too and questioned at once upon what he had discovered. "I know the general outline, but I want a little time to prepare my report," replied he. Then Sun Chuan produced Tsao's letter and gave it to Su. "That came yesterday. I have sent the bearer of it back, and this gathering is to consider the reply," said he. Lu read the letter, which said, "When I, the solitary one, received the imperial command to punish a fault, my banners went south and Liu Tsung became my prisoner, while his people flocked to my side at the first rumor of my coming. Under my hand are 100 legions, and I have many able captains. My desire is, General, that we go on a great hunting expedition into Chiangxia and together attack Liu Pei. We will share his land between us, and we will swear perpetual amity. If happily you would not be a mere looker-on, I pray you reply quickly." "What have you decided upon, my lord?" asked Lu as he finished the letter. "I have not yet decided." Then Chang Kao said, "It would be imprudent to withstand Tsao's many legions backed by the imperial authority. Moreover, your most important defense against him is the long river Yangtze. And since Tsao has gained possession of Qingchu, the river is his ally against us. We cannot withstand him, and the only way to tranquility, in my opinion, is submission." The words of the speaker accord with the manifest decree of Providence, echoed all the assembly. Sun Chuan remaining silent and thoughtful, Chang Kao again took up the argument. "Do not hesitate, my lord. Submission to Tsao means tranquility for the people of Wu and safety for the inhabitants of Chiangnan." Sun Chuan still remained silent, his head bent in deep thought. Presently he arose and paced slowly out at the door, and Lu followed him. Outside he took Lu by the hand, saying, "What do you desire? What they have all been saying is very derogatory to you. A common man might submit. You cannot." "Why, how do you explain that?" "If people like us submitted, we could just return to our village and everything would go on as before. If you submit, whither will you go? You will be created a marquis, perhaps. You will have one carriage, no more, one saddle horse, that is all. Your retinue will be half a score. Will you be able to sit facing the south and call yourself by the kingly title of the solitary? Each one in your crowd of hangers-on is thinking for himself, is purely selfish, and you should not listen to them but take a line of your own, and that quickly. Determined to play a bold game." Sun Chuan sighed. "They all talk and talk, they miss my point of view. Now you have just spoken of a bold game, and your view is the same as mine. Surely God has expressly sent you to me. Still, Tsao is now the stronger by all Yuan Shao's army, and he has possession of Qingchu. I fear he is almost too powerful to contend with. I have brought back with me Chuko Liang, the brother of our Chuko Qin. If you questioned him, he would explain clearly. Is Master Sleeping Dragon really here? Really here in the guest house? It is too late to see him today, but tomorrow I will assemble my officials, and you will introduce him to all my best. After that, we will debate the matter." With these instructions, Lu retired. Next day he went to the guest house and conveyed Sun's commands to the guest, particularly saying, "When you see my master tomorrow, say nothing of the magnitude of Tsao's army." Ming smiled, saying, "I shall act as circumstances dictate. You may be sure I shall make no mistakes." Ming was then conducted to where the high officers, civil and military to the number of 20 and more, were assembled. They formed a dignified conclave as they sat in stately ranks with their tall headdresses and broad girdles. Chang Kao sat at the head and Ming first saluted him. Then, one by one, he exchanged the formal courtesies with them all. This done, he took his seat in the guest's chair. They, on their part, noted with interest his refined and elegant manner and his commanding figure, thinking within themselves, "Here is a man fitted for discourse." Chang Kao led the way in trying to bait the visitor. He said, "You will pardon the most insignificant of our official circle, myself, if I mention that people say you compare yourself with those two famous men of talent, Quan Chung and Yo Ai. Is there any truth in this?" "To a trifling extent I have compared myself with them," replied Ming. "I have heard that Liu Pei made 3 journeys to visit you when you lived in retirement in your simple dwelling, and that, when you consented to serve him, he said he was as lucky as a fish in getting home to the ocean. Then he desired to possess the district about Qingchu and Xianyang. Yet today all that country belongs to Tsao. I should like to hear your account of all that." Ming thought, "This Chang is Sun Chuan's first advisor, and unless I can nonplus him, I shall never have a chance with his master." So he replied, "In my opinion, the taking of the district around the Han River was as simple as turning over one's hand. But my master Liu is both righteous and humane and would not stoop to filching the possession of a member of his own house. So he refused the offer of succession. But Liu Tsung, a stupid lad, misled by specious words, submitted to Tsao and fell victim to his ferocity. My master is in camp at Chiangxia, but what his future plans may be cannot be divulged at present. Be it so, but your words and your deeds are something discordant. You say you are the equal of the 2 famous ones. Well, Quan Chung, as minister of Duke Quan, put his master at the very head of the feudal nobles, making his master's will supreme in all the land. Under the able statesmanship of Yo I, the feeble country of Yen conquered Che, reducing nearly 80 of its cities. These 2 were men of most commanding and conspicuous talent. When you lived in retirement, you smiled scornfully at ordinary people, passed your days in idleness, nursing your knees and posing in a superior manner, implying that if you had control of affairs, Liu Pei would be more than human. He should bring good to everybody and remove all evil. Rebellion and robbery would be no more. Poor Liu, before he obtained your help, was an outcast and a vagabond, stealing a city here and there where he could. With you to help him, he was to become the cynosure of every eye, and every lisping schoolboy was to say that he was a tiger who had grown wings. The hands were to be restored and Tsao and his faction exterminated. The good old days would be restored, and all the men who had been driven into retirement by the corruption of political life would wake up, rub the sleep out of their eyes, and be in readiness to lift the cloud of darkness that covered the sky, and gaze up at the glorious brilliancy of the sun and moon, to pull the people out of fire and water, and put all the world to rest on a couch of comfort. That was all to happen forthwith. Why then, when you went to Yuchu, did not Tsao's army throw aside their arms and armor and flee like rats? Why could you not have told Liu Pio how to give tranquility to his people? Why could you not aid his orphan son to protect his frontiers? Instead, you abandoned Xinye and fled to Fancheng. You were defeated at Tangyang. You fled to Syaku with no place to rest in. Thus, after you had joined Liu Pei, he was worse off than before. Was it thus with Quan Chung and Yo Ai? I trust you do not mind my blunt speech." Ming waited till he had closed his oration, then laughed and said, "How can the common birds understand the long flight of the roc? Let me use an illustration. A man has fallen into a terrible malady. First, the physician must administer hashish, then soothing drugs until his viscera shall be calmed into harmonious action. When the sick man's body shall have been reduced to quietude, then may he be given strong meats to strengthen him and powerful drugs to correct the disorder. Thus the disease will be quite expelled, and the man restored to health. If the physician does not wait till the humors and pulse are in harmony, but throws in his strong drugs too early, it will be difficult to restore the patient. My master suffered defeat at Junin and went to Liu Pao. He had then less than 1 company of soldiers and only 3 captains. That was indeed a time of extreme weakness. Sinye was a secluded, rustic town with few inhabitants and scanty supplies, and my master only retired there as a temporary refuge. How could he even think of occupying and holding it? Yet with insufficient force in a weak city, with untrained men and inadequate supplies, a camp was burned. 2 leaders and their army were nearly drowned and were frightened into running away. I doubt whether your 2 ancient heroes would have done any better. As to the surrender of Liu Tsung, Liu Pei knew nothing of it, and he was too noble and too righteous to take advantage of a kinsman's straits to seize his inheritance. As for the defeat at Tangyang, it must be remembered that Liu Pei was hampered with a huge voluntary following of common people, with their aged relatives and their children, whom he was too humane to abandon. He never thought of taking Chiangling, but willingly suffered with his people. This is a striking instance of his magnanimity. Small forces are no match for large armies. Victory and defeat are common episodes in every campaign. The great founder of the Han suffered many defeats at the hands of Xiangyu, but he finally conquered at Hesia, and that battle was decisive. Was not this due to the strategy of Han Xin who, though he had long served his master, had never won a victory? Indeed, real statesmanship, the restoration of stable government, is a master plan far removed from the vapid discourses and debates of a lot of bragging babblers and specious and deceitful talkers, who, as they themselves say, are immeasurably superior to the rest of mankind, but who, when it comes to deeds and decisions to meet the infinite and constant vicissitudes of affairs, fail to throw up a single capable man. Truly such people are the laughing-stock of all the world. Zhang Kao found no reply to this diatribe, but another in the assembly lifted up his voice, saying, "But what of Tsao's present position? There he is, encamped with many legions and numberless leaders. Whither he goes he is invincible, and whither he looks he is fearsome. He has taken Chiangxia already, as we see." The speaker was Yu Fan, and K. Ungming replied, "Tsao has acquired the swarms of Yuan Shao and stolen the crowds of Liu Pao. Yet I care not for all his legions." Yu Fan smiled icily. "When you got thrashed at Tangyang and in desperation sent this way and that to ask help, even then did you not care? But do you think big talk really takes people in? Liu had a few companies of scrupulous soldiers to oppose to 100 legions of fierce brutes. He retired to Sayaku for breathing space. The soldiers of Chiangtung are good, and there are ample supplies, and the long river is a defense. Is now a time for him to bend the knee before a renegade, to be careless of his honor and reputation? As a fact, Liu is not the sort of man to fear such a rebel as Tsao." Yu Fan had nothing to reply. Next, one Pu Chi, who was among those seated, said, "Will you talk of our land of Wu with a tongue like the tongues of Chang I and Su Xian of old?" K. Ungming replied, "You regard those 2 as mere speculative talkers. You do not recognize them also as heroes. Su Xian bore the Prime Minister's seals of 6 federated states. Chang I was twice Prime Minister of Xian. Both were men of conspicuous ability who brought about the reformation of their governments. They are not to be compared with those who quail before the strong and overbear the weak, who fear the dagger and run away from the sword. You, sir, have listened to Tso's crafty and empty rhodomontade, and it has frightened you into advising surrender. Dare you ridicule Su Qin and Chang Ai? Wu Qi was silenced. Then suddenly another interjected the question, what do you think of Tso? It was Sue Tsung who had spoken, and K. Ming replied, Tso is one of the rebels against the dynasty. Why ask about him? You are mistaken, said Sue Tsung. The hands have outlasted their allotted time, and the end is near. Tso already has 2/3 of the empire, and people are turning to him. Your master has not recognized the fateful moment, and to contend with a man so strong is to try to smash stones with eggs. Failure is certain. K. Ming angrily replied, Why do you speak so undutifully, as if you knew neither father nor prince? Loyalty and filial duty are the essentials of a man's being. For a minister of Han, correct conduct demands that one is pledged to the destruction of anyone who does not follow the canon of a minister's duty. Tso's forebears enjoyed the bounty of Han, but instead of showing gratitude, he nourishes in his bosom thoughts of rebellion. The whole world is incensed against him, and yet you would claim for him the indication of destiny. Truly you are a man who knows neither father nor prince, a man unworthy of any words, and I decline to argue with you farther. The blush of shame overspread Sue's face, and he said no more. But another, one Lu Kai, took up the dispute and said, Although Tso overawes the emperor and in his name coerces the nobles, yet he is the descendant of a minister, while your master, though he says he is descended from a prince, has no proof thereof. In the eyes of the world he is just a weaver of mats, a seller of straw shoes. Who is he to strive with Tso? K. Ming laughed and replied, Are you not that Lu who pocketed the orange when you were sitting among Yuan Shao's guests? Listen to me. I have a word to say to you. Inasmuch as Tso is a descendant of a minister of state, he is by heredity a servant of the Han's. But now he has monopolized all state authority and knows only his own arbitrary will, heaping every indignity upon his lord. Not only does he forget his prince, but he ignores his ancestors. Not only is he a rebellious servant of Han, but the renegade of his family. Liu Pei of Yuchu is a noble scion of the imperial family upon whom the emperor has conferred rank, as is recorded in the annals. How then can you say there is no evidence of his imperial origin? Beside, the very founder of the dynasty was himself of lowly origin, and yet he became emperor. Where is the shame in weaving mats and selling shoes? Your mean, immature views are unfit to be mentioned in the presence of scholars of standing. This put a stop to Lu Kai's flow of eloquence, but another of those present said, K. Ming's words are overbearing and he distorts reason. It is not proper argument and he had better say no more, but I would ask him what classical canon he studied. K. Ming looked at his interlocutor, who was named Yen Chun, and said, The dryastusts of every age select passages and choose phrases. What else are they good for? Do they ever initiate a policy or manage an affair? Yin, who was a farmer in Sin and Tizuya, the fisherman of the Y River, Chang Liang and Chern Piying, Tang Yu and Kang Yin all were men of transcendent ability, but I have never inquired what classical canon they followed, or on whose essays they formed their style. Would you liken them to your rusty students of books, whose journeyings are comprised between their brush and their inkstone, who spend their days in literary futilities, wasting both time and ink? No reply was forthcoming. The speaker hung his head with shame. But another disputant, Chang Tershu by name, suddenly shouted, You are mightily fond of big words, sir, but they do not give any proof of your scholarship after all. I am inclined to think that a real scholar would just laugh at you. K. Ming replied, There are scholars and scholars. There is the noble scholar, loyal and patriotic, of perfect rectitude and a hater of any crookedness. The concern of such a scholar is to act in full sympathy with his day and leave to future ages a fine reputation. There is the scholar of the mean type, a pedant and nothing more. He labors constantly with his pen, in his callow youth composing odes, and in hoary age still striving to understand the classical books completely. Thousands of words flow from his pen, but there is not a solid idea in his breast. He may, as did Yang H-seung, glorify the age with his writings and yet stoop to serve a tyrant such as Mang. No wonder Yang threw himself out of a window. He had to. That is the way of the scholar of mean type. Though he composes odes by the hundred, what is the use of him? Chern could make no reply. The other officers now began to hold this man of torrential speech in wholesome fear. Only 2 of them had failed to challenge him, but when they would have tried to pose K-Ung-ming, suddenly someone appeared from without and angrily shouted, "This is not paying fit respect to a guest. You have among you the most wonderful man of the day, and you all sit there trying to entangle him in speech, while our arch-enemy TSO is nearing our borders. Instead of discussing how to oppose him, you are all wrangling and disputing." All eyes turned toward him. It was Huang Kai, of Lingling, who was master of the commissariat of Wu. He turned to address K-Ung-ming, saying, "There is a saying that though something may be gained by talk, there is more to be got by silence. Why not give my lord the advantage of your valuable advice, instead of wasting time in discussion with this crowd?" "They did not understand," replied K-Ung-ming, "and it was necessary to enlighten them. I had to speak." As Huang Kai and Lu Su led the guests toward their master's apartments, they met his brother Chuko Chin. K-Ung-ming saluted him with the deference due to an elder brother, and Chin said, "Why have you not been to see me, brother? I am now in the service of Liu of Yu Chu, and it is right that public affairs precede private obligations. I cannot attend to any private matters till my work is done. You must pardon me, brother. After you have seen the Marquis you will come and tell me your news," said he as he left. As they went along to the audience chamber, Lu Su again cautioned K-Ung-ming against any rash speech. The latter nodded but made no other reply. When they reached the hall, Sun Chun came down the steps to welcome his guests and was extraordinarily gracious. After the mutual salutations, the guest was given a chair while the Marquis's officials were drawn up in 2 lines, on one side the civil, on the other the military. Lu Su stood beside K-Ung-ming and listened to his introductory speech. As K-Ung-ming spoke of Yuantair's intentions, he glanced up at his host. He noted the gray eyes and brown beard and the dignified, commanding air of the man and thought within himself, "Certainly in appearance this is no common man. He is one to be incited perhaps, but not to be persuaded. It will be better to see what he has to say first, then I will try to stir him to action." The serving of tea being now finished, Sun Chun began with the usual gracious ceremonial expressions. "Lu Su has often spoken of your genius," said the host. "It is a great pleasure to meet you. I trust you will confer upon me the advantage of your instruction." "I am neither clever nor learned," was the reply. "It humiliates me to hear such words. You have been at H. lately, and you helped your master to fight that decisive battle with TSO, so you must know exactly the measure of his military strength. My master's army was small and his generals were few. The city was paltry and lacked supplies. Hence no stand could be made against such a force as TSO had. How many men has he in all? Horse and foot, land and marine, he has 100 legions. Is there not some doubt about that?" said Sun Chun. "None whatever. When TSO went to Yenchu, he had the 20 legions of Qingchu. He gained 50 or 60 legions when Yuan Shao fell. He has 30 or 40 legions newly recruited in the capital. Lately, he has acquired 20 or 30 legions in Qingchu. And if these be reckoned up, the total is not less than 150. Hence I said 100, for I was afraid of frightening your officers. Lu Su was much disturbed and turned pale. He looked meaningly at the bold speaker, but Ke Ungming would not see. Sun Chuan went on to ask if his arch-enemy had a corresponding number of leaders. He has enough administrators and strategists to control such a host, and his capable and veteran leaders are more than 1,000, perhaps more than 2,000. What will be Tsao's next move now that he has overcome Qingchu and Chu? He is camped along the river and he has collected a fleet. If he does not intend to invade your territory, what can be his intentions? Since that is his intention, it is a case of fight or not fight. I wish you would decide that for me. I have something I could say, but I fear, sir, you would not care to hear it. I am desirous of hearing your most valuable opinion. Strife has prevailed for a long time, and so you should raise your army and Liu Pei should collect his forces south of the Han River, to act with you in contest for the empire against Tsao. Now Tsao has overcome most of his difficulties, and his recent conquest of Qingchu has won him great and wide renown. Though there might be one bold enough to tackle him, yet there is no foothold for such. That is how Liu Pei has been forced to come here. But General, I wish you to measure your forces and decide whether you can venture to meet him, and that without loss of time. If you cannot, then follow the advice of your counselors. Cease your military preparations and yield. Turn your face to the north and serve. Sun Chuan did not reply, but his guest went on. You have the reputation of being reasonable, but I know also you are inclined to hesitate. Still, this matter is most important, and evil will be quickly upon you if you do not decide. Then replied Sun, if what you say represents the actual conditions, why does not Liu Pei yield? Well, you know Tsin Herng, that hero of the state of Chi. His character was too noble for him to submit to any shame. It is necessary to remember that Liu Pei also is an offshoot from the dynastic family, beside being a man of great renown. Everyone looks up to him. His lack of success is simply the will of heaven, but manifestly he could not bow the knee to anyone. These last words touched Sun Chuan to the quick, and he could not control his anger. He shook out his sleeves, rose, and left the audience chamber. Those present smiled at each other as they dispersed. But Lu Su was annoyed and reproached Ke Ungming for his maladroit way of talking to Sun. Luckily for you, my lord is too large-minded to rebuke you to your face, for you spoke to him most contemptuously. Ke Ungming threw back his head and laughed. What a sensitive fellow it is, cried he. I know how Tsao could be destroyed, but he never asked me, so I said nothing. If you really do know how that could be done, I will certainly beg my lord to ask you. Tsao hosts in my eyes are but as swarms of ants. I have but to lift my hand and they will be crushed. Lu Su at once went into his master's private room, where he found him still very irritable and angry. Ke Ungming insulted me too deeply, said Sun. I have already reproached him, said Lu Su, and he laughed and said you were too sensitive. He would not give you any advice without being asked for it. Why did you not seek advice from him, my lord? At once Sun's anger changed to joy. He said, so he had a plan ready, and his words were meant to provoke me. I did despise him for a moment, and it has very nearly lost me. So he returned to the audience chamber where the guest was still seated and begged Ke Ungming to continue his speech. He spoke courteously, saying, I offended you just now. I hope you are not implacable. And I also was rude, replied Ke Ungming. I entreat pardon. Host and guest retired to the inner room where wine was served. After it had gone round several times, Sun Chuan said, "The enemies of Tsao were Lu Pu, Liu Pio, Yuan Shao, Yuan Shu, his brother, Liu Pei, and my poor self. Now most of these are gone, and only Liu Pei and I remain. I will never allow the land of Wu to be dictated to by another. The only one who could have withstood Tsao was Liu Pei, but he has been defeated lately, and what can he do now against such force?" Ke Youngming replied, "Although defeated, Liu Pei still has Kuan Yu with a legion of veterans, and Liu Che still leads the men of Chiangxia, another legion. Tsao's army is far from home, and the men are worn out. They made a frantic effort to come up with my master, and the light horse marched 300 li in a day and a night. This was the final kick of the crossbow spring, and the bolt was not swift enough to penetrate even the thin silken vesture of Lu. The army can do no more. They are northern men, unskilled in water warfare, and the men of Qingqiu are unwilling supporters. They have no desire to help Tsao. Now if you, General, will assist Liu Pei, Tsao will certainly be broken and he must retire northwards. Then your country and Qingqiu will be strong and firmly established. But the scheme must be carried out without delay, and only you can decide." Sun Chuan joyfully replied, "Your words, master, open up the road clearly. I have decided and shall have no further doubts." So the orders were issued forthwith to prepare for a joint attack on Tsao, and he bade Lu Su bear the news of his decision to all his officers. He himself escorted Ke Youngming to the guest quarters and saw to his comfort. When Chang Ko heard of the decision, he met his colleagues and said to them, "He has fallen into the trap set by this Ke Youngming." They went in a body to their lord and said, "We hear you are going to attack Tsao, but how do you stand when compared with Yuan Shao? In those days Tsao was comparatively weak, and yet he overcame. What is he like today with his countless legions? He is not to be lightly attacked, and to listen to Chuko Liang's advice to engage in a conflict is like carrying fuel to a fire." Sun Chuan made no reply, and Ku Young took up the argument. "Liu Pei has been defeated, and he wants to borrow our help to beat his enemy. Why must our lord lend himself to his schemes? Pray listen to our leader's words." Doubts again surged up in the mind of Sun Chuan. When the troop of advisers had retired, Lu Su came in saying, "They came to exhort you not to fight, but to compel you to surrender simply because they wish to secure the safety of their families. They distort their sense of duty to serve their own ends, and I hope you will not take their advice." Sun Chuan being sunk in thought and saying nothing, Lu Su went on, "If you hesitate you will certainly be led astray by the majority and—" "Retire for a time," said his master. "I must think it over carefully." So Lu Su left the chamber. Among the soldiers some wished for war, but of the civil officers, all were in favor of surrender, and so there were many discussions and much conflict of opinion. Sun Chuan went to his private apartments greatly perplexed. There his worry was easily discernible, and he neither ate nor slept. He was quite unable to decide finally upon a course of action. Then the Lady Wu asked him what so troubled him, and he told her of the threatened danger, and the different opinions his advisers held one and another, and all his doubts and fears. If he fought, he might fail, and if he offered to surrender, perhaps Tsao would reject his proposal. Then she replied, "Have you forgotten the last words of my sister? As to one recovering from a fit of drunkenness, or waking out of a dream, so came to him the dying words of the mother who bore him. His mother's advice he called to mind. In Chu Yu's counsels you safety find." What happened will be told in the next chapter.